Hey, welcome guys. This is another one of my great presentations that I know you just so look forward to. This one, I'm actually going to try to really time this down. I've got a timer running next to me. Make sure I don't go around. I'm trying to keep it within 10 minutes, even if I have to break this whole lectures up in like a couple parts. So just letting you know that. Okay, other thing is we're going to be covering the Jeffersonian Republic from about 1800 to 1812. And not only that, but in this presentation, you'll see some words that are in blue. Hopefully you have a colored monitor. And those are key words that you should know, like key phrases, key terms that you should have written down and know the historical significance thereof. So just let you know. So we're going to start with Jefferson Republic, 1800 to 1812. Okay, here we go. And I'm going to try to keep this really fast. So if I'm talking really fast, you can always slow this down and go back over and look at it again. Okay, so the election of 1800 becomes one of the most dirtiest campaigns of all. Uh, no pun intended, since it was a lot of mudslinging. Get it? Dirty campaign, a lot of mudslinging. Okay, Federalists versus Republicans. You have Jefferson versus Adams. There's a lot of innuendos that are going back and forth with each other and accusations to one another and everything else. Um, uh, Remember that Jefferson is a Democratic Republican, used to be known as a anti-Federalist, and Adams was definitely a diehard Federalist. Okay, unfortunately for Adams, though, the Federalists have kind of lost their support due to the Alien Sedition Acts, something you clearly know from the last lecture and the stuff that we've talked about in class as well. This really hurts Adams. Remember, because the populace kind of turns against him of the things that the Alien and Sedition Acts did and curtailed, and you couldn't speak out against the government. You guys know everything about the Alien Sedition Act, so I'm not going to go over that in this lecture. Um, you know, Unfortunately, there's really no war with France. Remember, Adams keeps saying that it's imminent, it's going to happen, it's going to happen, it's going to happen. So he prepares for war. Creates a big navy and everything else. But he prepares all this, but it's never really used. Remember, there is that quasi-war that takes place, but it's never the war that Adams made it out it was going to be. And it was really more, like I said in class, a pissing match between the two countries. On the flip side, the Federalists actually begin to attack Jefferson. They accuse him of having a relationship with one of his slaves, Sally Hemings, and fathering her children. Actually, he does in 1990s. I'm not sure exactly what year in the 1990s. I can't remember off the top of my head. But there was a DNA testing that was done that actually did prove that Jefferson fathered at least one of Sally Hemings' children, and there could possibly have been more, but they did prove the one. Of course, during the campaign of 1800, Jefferson denies this fully. Ironically enough, Hemings, I said Jimmy's, I think a minute ago. Sally Hemings is the half sister of Jefferson's wife that had passed away. So there is a connection there. No pun intended either. Okay, so and they also accused Jefferson of being an atheist, which is not true. If anything was true, anything about Jefferson's religion was that he probably was more of a deist, and we also know that word too. So I'm not going to go into that one, but so they accuse him of being an atheist, but he's definitely not an atheist. But Jefferson does have a lot of contradictions. He's a man full of them. First, in his writings, and he claims that he is the common man, relates to the common person, but yet in reality, he owns Monticello. He has a lot of money. He spends a lot of money too. Remember in his writings of Declaration of Independence, all are equal. Of course, he's a slave owner. He preaches limited government power, but he buys Louisiana. Okay, and we'll talk about that one in this lecture as well, in a lot more detail anyway. And he writes often about there should be no intermixture of races, and of course he has a relationship with his slave. So he's a man full of contradictions, a lot of contradictions for Jefferson. Okay, so the election of 1800 becomes known as the Revolution of 1800. Jefferson received 73 of the electoral votes to Adams 65, so he barely beats Adams. He doesn't beat him by a large amount, and most of Jefferson's votes come from the South and in New York. Now, Aaron Burr is also running. Remember how the elections run? That whoever wins first place gets the presidency, whoever gets second place gets VP, whoever wins third place gets Secretary of State. And remember that gets fixed not until the 12th Amendment. That will fix that little problem in the Constitution. But Aaron Burr also reached 73 electoral votes, and he's also a Democratic Republican. So you end up with a presidential tie. In Article 2, Section 1, Paragraph 2 of the Constitution, which I'm sure you knew, the House of Representatives would have to break the tie, exactly as the Founding Fathers wrote it and exactly as they planned it to work. Okay, but the only problem here was, or the ironic part here was, is that the House of Representatives is actually made up of the Federalists. There was a majority of the Federalists control the House of Representatives. So it really comes down, okay, the Federalists don't like either one of the candidates. They don't like Jefferson, and they definitely don't like Burr. And Hamilton has no love for either one. As a matter of fact, he despises both of them. So Hamilton ends up throwing his support behind Jefferson, mainly only because of the fact that it comes down to who he hates the worst. Again, no love for either one, but he likes Jefferson, and that, I'm using that very loosely. He likes Jefferson better than he likes Burr. I mean, he literally despises Burr, and we'll find out what happens with Hamilton and Burr if you don't know. That comes up a little bit later. Okay, so why is the revolution? Well, first of all, Jefferson, claims that the Federalists have kind of moved away from the ideas of the revolution, the roots of that revolution, that the Federalists have made or are turning the new America, the new United States, more into a monolith. Well, I just messed that word totally up. More of a monarchical type of system, like a monarchy, or moving it in that way, a privileged class. So again, remember that concept about the common man that he always preached, or at least claimed. So he wants to bring it back to the original, back to its roots, I guess you could say. But the biggest thing is that the reason it's known as the revolution is because it is the first time in American history that power passes peacefully from one political party to another. In other words, there's no war, there's no coup, there's no, there's a lot of mudslinging during the campaign and during the election, but there's no major violence that takes place or anything else. So the power actually transfers peacefully. And the reason we don't count Adams' presidency as that is because remember, Washington does side or has leans more to the federalistic ideologies with the Federalist Party than he actually did with the Anti-Federalists, or what does become known as the Democratic Republicans. So Adams and Washington are pretty well in line with one another, so it's not really a major um, transfer power. That was not my alarm. Okay, so it was, but between Jefferson and Adams, there's a big difference, a huge difference. But the power does transfer peacefully. Now, Jefferson gets sworn into office on March 4th, 1801. He actually walks to the Capitol to prove that he's the common man. He doesn't take the carriage ride and the big pomp and circumstances. He literally just walks to the inauguration. Okay, and in his inauguration, he says three key things. You can go online, you can look up Jefferson's inaugural speech, but there's three great quotes that come out of that inaugural speech. The first one is the will of the majority is in all cases to prevail. So in other words, the majority must always rule. Second one is we are the Republicans. We are all Republicans, and we are all Federalists. In other words, regardless of the party differences that may or may not exist, when it really comes down to it, we're all collectively one. And if this experiment in democracy is going to work, we must all work together. And as far as his foreign policy goes, yeah, Jefferson states that honest friendship with all nations and tame alliances with none. I could just check my time right here real quick. Okay, wow, that was a really fast 10 minutes. Okay, and Jefferson had a hard time actually reconciling his theories with reality. Like I said, he was very inconsistent, and he left most Federalists in their government positions. So it kind of upsets the power-hungry Democrat Republicans that help support him get into office. He actually upsets them because they all think that they're going to get a major piece of the pie when he becomes president, and he's going to put them in these nice positions and everything else. But unfortunately, Jefferson does, well, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on your interpretation, Jefferson leaves most of them in the position because he feels like it would just upset the government if you had to bring in new people, train them, and everything else, and in those positions. So he leaves them there. So that was really a good thing. Um, okay, my time is actually about like 15 seconds. So I am definitely going to stop right here. This is part one. Like I said, I'm going to try to keep these within 10 minutes, and I'll just continue going with part two right here at Jefferson Restraint. So I'm going to stop right here because my clock is ready to go buzz off, so I will come back to this one.